So much for being here. Mayor Bloomberg's choice to lead the public schools has brought a great friend to learning leaders. Chancellor Klein has served diligently to improve our schools, and as his response, it's also included a growing emphasis on parent training and parent engagement. We know that learning leaders means a lot to him personally as well as professionally. You're here every year, and we really enjoy hearing your encouraging words. Please welcome once again to our opening meeting, Schools Chancellor Klein.
Thank you, Dana. Good morning, learning leaders. Good morning. That isn't going to cut it. This is New York. Good morning, learning leaders. Good morning. Now we're talking. Mindy, I want to thank you and Ellen for the incredible work you're doing. Obviously, Caroline, so important. You're an inspiration to our city. Chris Quinn, who is here, Mike Mulgrew, and I really look forward to working with Mike. And while he doesn't have high heels, he's got the greatest haircut of any union leader ever. One of the things we bond together is when the cameras take pictures of the two of us, the light off of his head is even more than the light off of my head. So I really appreciate that, Michael. I'm glad to see my friend Danny O'Donnell. A little learning experience here. He and I have disagreed on some things in education. We agreed to sit down and have lunch. And I thought it was really not far from here. It was a bonding lunch. Now, we still disagree on some things, but we love one another. And that's what New York is all about. Learning to disagree, to have your discussions, your disagreements, to fight for the things you believe in, but don't make it personal. And what you will learn is, even people who don't see eye to eye with you, you can learn so much from them. And for that, Danny, I thank you very much. Go ahead, good morning. I want to thank all of you. It's so important to our schools what you do. But I also think it's important to you. I learned from the Big Brothers program. I learned from a mental health community program I started in Washington, D.C. that when you volunteer and give back to your community, you get so much out of it. You know, Winston Churchill told us, and these words are so important to me, we make a living out of what we get, but we make a life out of what we give. And you people are making lives by what you're giving to our kids in New York City. And it's so vitally important. And on behalf of 1.1 million of them, I really thank you. You know, I want you to think about it. Chris Quinn talked about the current economic situation. These are tough economic times in our country. You know, you hear a lot of arguments about who's to blame, the bankers or the people who borrowed money, couldn't pay it back, extended credit card and everything. I'll tell you one group for sure who is not to blame: our kids, right? And they're going to have to pay, unfortunately. Oh, but it's important, because when you see the budget cuts and the other things that our state has to go through, our kids are going to have to take a hit. And that's why this year, and I've been here 8 years in a row, this year, more than ever, I'm asking each one of you, you've got to give more, because our kids need you that much more. I hope somebody didn't faint over there. There's one person over here who thought she was giving the max. When I asked her to give more, we okay? But in all seriousness, really, when you think about it, you know, education is the thing that changes lives. It was so powerful to me just a few minutes ago. I was interviewed by people from the Columbia newspaper. And I was a kid, many of you know, grew up in public housing in New York in a family where nobody went to college. My father had to quit high school during the Great Depression. And teachers in Astoria really let me stand on their shoulders to see a world I couldn't see from the first floor of public housing. And it's because of public education I went to this great university, which would have been unimaginable when I was a young kid. I didn't know what Columbia was. But I went here, and this university changed my life. And it enabled me to see a world, to move from public housing to work in the most public house of all in America, the West Wing of the White House, where I served President Clinton. That's the power of education. And our kids now, regardless of color, regardless of zip code, regardless of family income, we have the capacity. Go ahead, no. See, when people tell me, you know, well, that kid is poor or grows up in a challenging family or lives in a zip code that is high poverty, and so we shouldn't set our expectations high. Nothing upsets me more, because I think about what my life would have been like if teachers and volunteers and others didn't set their expectations very, very high. So I understand that. I also think about what my education would have been like if it actually matched my parents' income, rather than the great teachers that I had in Astoria. Teachers like Sidney Harris, my physics teacher, who actually told me that I should apply to Columbia, and then I said to him, number one, I won't get in, and number two, I can't afford it. And he said, nobody who didn't apply ever got in, and until you apply, you won't know what kind of scholarship they give you. So I understand that, I understand your role, but I also understand the future of this city depends on every kid. And I see so many people here today, so diverse an audience, people from every corner of the globe. Think about it. They come to New York, right? Whether it's from Latin America, whether it's from South America, Asia, Europe, wherever. They come to New York City. And they come here for a better opportunity for their kid. A world in which their kid can have the opportunities that maybe they didn't always have. That's what makes New York special. But that won't happen unless all of us recommit ourselves in every way to pull together to make sure every kid in every community gets the education he or she will need. The real heroes in education are those who give voice to the voiceless. We got a lot of people in New York who know how to make noise. Trust me, after 7 years as Chancellor, I've heard a lot of it. I love it. It's part of the job and part of New York. But there are kids out there right now who are not getting an education in the way that we need because people aren't championing the fight for them. And each one of you, find the voiceless and go fight for them. Now it's my privilege and real opportunity to introduce to you two heroes, people that I know and respect so much, who are going to come up to you and speak. Because, you know, it takes two sides to make this learning leaders thing work. Some parent came up to me today who I know and said, you know, this school, they don't want us. So if the school doesn't want you, it doesn't work. Now that's unfortunate. But when you have people who are like John Barnes, who's with us here today, who I got to know, probably was one of the youngest principals I ever appointed. He was at the Leadership Academy. He's up in the Bronx doing just an incredible job up there. He became an executive principal, asked him to leave a school that he had turned around to go up to the Bronx to a really challenging school, the Bronx BECA, and he's doing incredible work up there. And one of the things that he's doing is making sure he brings in the resources from the community, learning leaders and others to support, to mentor, to encourage his kids. And one of the things Learning Leaders is doing, which is great, moving the focus to some degree from elementary to middle and high school. Because you know, in elementary school, the kids are just easier, and it's easier to volunteer. It gets a little more challenging in middle school. I know, ask my parents. And when you get to high school, it can be very, very difficult. I know, ask my parents. So getting the adults more involved, the role models, the people with the values, the people with the support, saying to our kids, there's a life outside of the streets, in the classroom. That's really critical, particularly as we move to middle and to high school. And Mindy, I think it's just great that you're putting that focus on.